And I want to remind you that this insane attacking position that Magnus Carlsen got in this position, of course, if the king comes here, rook to c5 wins the queen. This insane attacking position arose many moves ago from one knight h3. Welcome back to the Chess Geek channel. Today we are going to look at the Amar opening, which is one knight h3. Now we're going to learn this opening through a game that Magnus Carlsen played in 2018, which he absolutely destroyed. Although I don't particularly recommend this becoming your main weapon of choice, it does carry some merit, and if you'd like every once in a while to spice things up and get out of book theory while still having some plans and strategies backing up your moves, then this is a great way to do so. And in this video, we're going to learn these ideas and plans by looking at this game. Right before we get into the game, one quick ask. 80% of the people watching this video are not subscribed, so if you're not subscribed, hit that sub button. It takes a second, and that way you're never going to miss out on another video. Let's go ahead and look at this opening. This is Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces, and his opponent played knight to h6. And perhaps there's some psychological reasoning behind this. Although losing to Magnus Carlsen is not really a humiliating thing ever, it would be slightly, at least frustrating if you were to lose with this opening, right? So if you're losing to Magnus Carlsen or anyone playing knight h3, there would be some shame with that, and that's why perhaps knight h6 was played. Either way, the ideas for white are the same. This knight is going to reroute to f2. If black tries to very quickly chop this off, they're giving away the double bishops. You get the g-file. We've talked about this through many other openings. For example, we've looked at the lemming defense, which is knight to a6 really early on, and in this video we covered bishop takes a bit more in depth, and we looked at why this is really bad. And so in general, taking the knight is never an option. And what white is going to do is move this f-pawn. In this game, Magnus plays f4. There have been some games that Hikaru has played f3 and put the knight on f2. It doesn't really matter. Either way, you're going for a quick center expansion with the knight supporting the center on e4, which it usually doesn't do. And that means that against moves like e5, with both of your knights supporting the center, you can still try to crash through with e4, which is usually not so possible. And so this is a great way to get center control in a less common, more unorthodox way. So knight h6, we had f4, which is exactly what I mentioned. We had d5, and now we have knight to f2. Again, we're trying to crash through. So in this game, the move knight g4 was played, which is very rare. You're probably not going to face this. Usually the knight is going to stay here, and it's going to be an absolute monster. And so there maybe was also some strategic planning. Black tried to get rid of this knight, which they know is a very strong piece. And this is why this game is actually super interesting, because in some ways it's the most testing variation, because your knight gets misplaced, your king can't castle, although you do have to understand your king is very close to castling. And what you should notice is that you can artificially castle very quickly, and that's exactly what happens in this game. Okay, so we have b3, the bishop develops, the other bishop develops. This looks great so far, right? Both bishops very powerful here. And, aside from the king, which again can't really be targeted, this looks like a very successful opening for white. They have good center control, good space because of this f4 move, and nothing to complain about. The bishop does drop back, queen c7, the knight develops, and now the queen comes out to h5. One of the benefits of gaining so much space is that you can already start to attack also on this side of the board. Of course, though, you have to be very careful taking like this with the potential risks that it brings entering yourself into a pin. So instead, we have rook to f1, and as I mentioned, artificially castling by hand with king to g1 now, setting up some ideas of going f5 at some point. We have knight to b4 here. And here, Magnus actually blunders, and there's many blunders in this game. This was by no means a perfect game. This was a rapid event, by the way, and so, he didn't have the most amount of time to think about these moves, and he blundered here. Rook ac1, which is a blunder tactically because of knight a2, and if you take, you lose the bishop here. So Magnus blundered, and instead had to then move the rook away again. But even so, because of the space you have, I mean, this position looks really good. this knight is misplaced, and it takes it a lot of time to come back, and it actually hurts black more than it helps black. And in the meantime, all of this spatial advantage on the king side is not something that you should forget about. And indeed, f5 comes, and then e4 comes, and white has just gained a whole lot of space really quickly. Knight to d5, beautiful idea, sacrificing the pawn, the bishop, but of course, this knight is also hanging, so tactically this works. And after knight takes, you might think, wait, after takes, in that final position, we have one piece, they have two pieces, we lost a piece there. No, because of this beautiful idea, bishop c4. If Magnus blunders something, you better believe that he has something planned in the future as well. And now, due to the pressure on f7, the attack on the knight, black is already in a world of pain. So knight to b4 was played, c3, kicking the knight away, but ultimately queen takes f7. And now this king, funnily enough, is more misplaced than this king on g1. And again, that's the big benefit. Even if they force the trade of the knights, your king is in no danger in that process whatsoever. So we have some checks. We have bishop to d6, takes, king takes, and queen to c5, keeping the queens on the board while the king is so exposed. Queen to d6, queen to b6, again, keeping the queens on. Bishop d7, and d4. And you can see visually, and also just by some quick calculation and ideas in the position, that white has no trouble. I mean, the pressure in the center, the control in the center is overwhelming. And once again, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that that was very much possible because of the knight in the game that really helped the center form quickly and effectively. Okay, so queen to a5, queen to a2, we have the rook centralizing on d1, the queen sliding around, Magnus kind of just moving around, trying to see what's the most effective way into the position. Eventually, there's some trades in the queen side, leaving this king even more dangerous, and for that reason, after f6 and bishop to c4, the bishop reroutes to d5, ultimately getting traded, and finally d5. So the center is finally formed more completely. We have now two passed pawns, not something to forget, and after the queen moves, rook a1, and so white has weakened tremendously the defense on the queen side, and now looks to go ahead and actually add pressure there. Notice the knight is also attacked, so the king moved here, the knight was taken. Now, if you try to evaluate this position, it might seem on the surface that this is fine and black can survive, but because the king is so weak, even with the shelter the major pieces are doing for it, it's very difficult to play. Rook a5, beautiful idea, threatening rook to c5, which would win the queen, and after king to b8, there was not much improvements you can do. I mean, you can try to run over here, but because of the pawn, and also because of the other rook that can come in, this is already game over. But this now allows queen to a7, and black resigned here, and I want to remind you that this insane attacking position that Magnus Carlsen got in this position, of course, if the king comes here, rook to c5 wins the queen, this insane attacking position arose many moves ago from one knight h3. And of course, Magnus Carlsen can probably play any move and win, but hopefully I've done a good job of explaining the ideas. You're going for the center control, you're rerouting the knight to a square where it's effective, so much so that the opponent felt it necessary to waste moves by forcing the trade of the knights. And other than that, I mean, you have very natural development in the game. Your rook centralize, you open up the center at some point, the queen comes out. What could be more natural? Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new around here. Like this video if you learned something new from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.